Welcome to It's True, Tales of the Paranormal, exploring the inexplicable. Most encounters with the odd are quite explainable. An overwhelming number, 80 to 90% in fact, will find very logical explanation. Our focus is on that 10 to 20% that do not. It's time to give a voice to real encounters and share genuine experiences of the paranormal. And now, it's true.
Thank you, Adam, and welcome to It's True, Tales of the Paranormal. Alien Abduction. Now, stories from the 60s and 70s, Betty and Barney Hill, Travis Walton, those famous cases. Back then, it seemed like science fiction in the making. Now, with what we know of the expansiveness of this universe, those sci-fi tales have been, well, not normalized certainly, but now they're far more realistic. Take our guests today, Anne and Mariah, a mother and daughter who had very similar accounts, but had never shared them with each other until decades later. The trauma surrounding the experiences had prompted them to bury those encounters, hoping they would just leave their memories, I suppose. But then they shared those encounters and realized how eerily similar they were. And they're going to share them with us today on It's True, Tales of the Paranormal. So next, we'll hear from Anne and Mariah. All right, back on It's True, Tales of the Paranormal, and joined by two very special guests, Mariah and Anne. Guys, thanks for coming and welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having us.
Yeah, you have two very unique encounters to share. And Mariah, we'll start with you. Tell us about your experiences.
All right. Living in Cary, just outside of Raleigh in North Carolina. We lived in these...
Yeah, I know Cary.
We lived in these little townhouses, and they all kind of shared walls, if you could say. They were that close together. And the backyards had these really tall privacy fences. You could not see through them at all, okay? So you couldn't see your neighbor's backyard. When somewhere between 5 and 7, I remember it was late at night, and I remember looking out the window and when I looked out my window and it was in the second story bedroom, I still could not see in my neighbor's backyard at all. This was 84, 85. Yeah, I think it was 1984, 1985, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember looking out the window, and then all of a sudden, everything went white. And then the next thing I know, I'm in this weird greenish blue bubble, and I'm floating outside of my window. And I don't know how I got outside of my window. And at first, I am freaking out, and I remember just panicking because I'm like, where am I going? Who's taking me? What's going on? You know, I'm thinking, where's my mom? You know, what's going on? How is this? What's happening? And I remember freaking out, and then I remember feeling this sense of overwhelming calmness. And this voice in my head that was not my voice, it was a male-sounding voice. And it said, oh, calm down. You've done this before 1,000 times. Get over yourself. Stop freaking out. You're going to be fine. And then right after that voice said something very similar to that, I just was like, oh, okay, I've done this. And then I remember while I was floating, looking down. And since I was actually outside of the house, looking down, I could see into the backyard of my neighbor. And I remember looking at everything because I was kind of curious, what's my neighbor's backyard? I was a nosy little kid, And I remember looking down and I saw everything that was back there. Well, for the longest time, I thought it was just a dream I had had. And I wasn't sure that it had necessarily happened until the day that I had talked to Grambo about it. She knew things that were in the neighbor's backyard because she'd been back there before. I had never, ever, ever been back there a day in my life. As soon as I started describing the backyard, she was like, yes, that's exactly what the backyard looks like. And then from that point on, after I was in the bubble and all the freaking out or whatever was over, and he was just like, you've done this 1,000 times. It just kind of, it goes black after that. It almost like I passed out or fell asleep or I'm not sure what happens after that.
Okay.
But I do also remember as a child freaking out if I did not have, and this is going to sound weird, underwear on when I went to bed. Because it was like it was my shield. So I often wonder if they did things to me.
that does sound odd.
Yeah,
a panty shield.
It was like my little shield. I don't know. And I mean, at age 5 or 6, why would a 5 or 6-year-old be thinking about something like that?
No idea.
I don't know either.
First of all, what time of day was this that you experienced this?
It was at night, late at night, very late at night. Like,
okay, had everyone else gone to bed?
Oh, everyone was asleep. Like, even the whole neighborhood was asleep. It was a very quiet little cul-de-sac. Lots of old people lived on that road. There wasn't. It wasn't like it was a party area or anything like that. It was just very quiet.
And there was woods behind.
And there was woods behind the house. So it's not like there was a lot of traffic or heavy roads or anything like that.
Nobody would have seen it.
No, nobody would have seen it. Nothing. And where I went out to see the backyard, of course it's behind the house where nobody would have seen me if I was up actually where I think I was. Mm-hmm. So that's my little story, and I'm sticking to it.
When you heard this masculine voice,
yes,
did that calm you down? Obviously,
amazingly it did. It was weird, and it was not a voice I'd ever heard before. I mean, and back then, Mom wasn't really seeing anybody, or there was no male figures in my life for me to really have voice comparisons with, really.
Right. Yeah.
So for it to have been a male voice that came through, and it was. And it didn't have an accent or anything like that. It was just very much calm down. You'll be fine. Stop freaking out.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I don't know how to describe it. It just like, almost like a commercial voice, but not commercial. Yeah. There's no accents or anything like that. It was just, I don't know. A male voice.
Well, you said that it said, calm down. Was that male voice frustrated with your anxiety at that point, or?
Almost like he'd been working all day. Like this was like his 500th or 5,000th abduction for the evening, and he's like, just shut up.
Annoyed.
Yeah, he was really annoyed. It was in a very annoyed voice. This alien was angry, I guess. But I never saw anything. It was just what I heard in my head.
Okay.
Telepathically.
So he's got his quota to meet, and daggone it, you're it. And
yeah,
he wants to get
and he
through
was
it.
like, quit struggling, quit fussing, because I'm, starfishing like Maggie from The Simpsons up there going, what the fuck? I didn't cuss, I said Simpsons. So I was like, and he's like, just calm down. So.
Yeah. And at that point, you have no recollection of anything that happened after that?
Nothing after that. It just goes black. Just completely black.
All right. Wow. Did that happen again? to you at a later age, or
Not that I know of,
Do you remember
that I remember, but I have seen
the old house?
several things
Yeah.
since then. Like
Okay.
there was one night I was in the old house we used to live in. The head of my bed used to be by a window, and I would look up outside, up at the stars, as trying to fall asleep, and there was this cigar-shaped, lit up, like not like an airplane or a helicopter, because I knew the difference. I was probably in my teens at this point, and when I was looking up, it literally exploded in the sky. I went outside at like 2 o'clock in the morning looking for shrapnel and debris, because I really thought something would have landed right there in the yard.
We live way out in the country.
Yeah, we're out in the country out here.
There's nobody.
It's a rural area. We live on a farm.
now, did that take place? Did that take place in Cary, or
No, that actually took place here in Lenoir City. Here in Tennessee, out here on the farm we used to live on. We had, a bunch of acreage and a barn and some horses, so it's relatively quiet, especially at 2 o'clock in the morning. And it just exploded.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Now,
I
at
thought
any
that was
point,
weird.
did you experience any, marks on your body, or anything that would indicate?
Oh yes.
Really?
Oh yeah. On my left arm. Where what shot is that they give it?
The polio or something. When
Okay, it's near the polio.
The three.
Yeah, it's near the
The
polio scar
three-pronged
that I've got. Right beside it, there's actually down in the muscle, I think there's something still in there. And I think it's been in there for decades now.
Have you had x-rays done?
I have
or anything
not.
along those lines?
No, I haven't. Just because if it is something weird, I kind of don't want to know. I kind of just, I'm just like, I just, whatever.
I'm just floating in a bubble.
Yeah, I'm just floating in a bubble.
Floating in a bubble.
God.
That's what. In any type of regressive hypnosis or anything like that, have you tried to
No, but I would
rekindle some of
love
those?
to. I would absolutely love to.
Okay.
But I've
yeah,
not
I would
tried
be
it yet.
curious to see what that would yield, if that would give you any answers to what you experience.
I'm hoping that, good or bad, it might explain some of the weird tics that I have.
Yeah.
Like weird anxieties and stuff like that. Like the weird underwear thing when I'm a kid. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, and this voice said you've done this dozens of times, or whatever he said.
He literally said
so does that
thousands
lead
of times.
Thousands of times. So
Yeah.
does this make you think that maybe you had been taken on multiple occasions prior to
Oh
this
yes, it makes me think
event
I've
that
been
you
taken
didn't
many times.
know?
Now I know in
Interesting.
the alien community, or whatever you want to call it, there is a thing about negative rhesus factor in the blood, and people who have like Rh negative blood. I do have Rh negative blood. I have type O negative.
Okay.
And I think, Ancient Aliens has kind of touched on that here and there a couple of times about how it may affect in relation to it. And I find it very intriguing that me having the negative could possibly be why they kept taking me. Because many other abductees also have an a negative rhesus factor to their blood.
Okay. Interesting. All right.
Yeah.
So do you think these are experiments that are biological in nature then?
Most definitely. because
Okay.
once I became a teenager and went all rebel, you know how teenagers go.
Yeah.
I started.
Never happened to me personally, but I understand where you're coming
Well, I started smoking cigarettes, and at that time in high school, I did drugs and drank alcohol and polluted my body a lot. And I think that's why they stopped taking me.
from. Really?
And
Wow.
she's not alone on that. 30 years
Okay.
earlier, I had the same feeling. And we have very, very similar. But I'll wait till it's my turn.
Yeah, and
Oh, okay.
because of the
Well, first of all, let me say I'm glad I've started drinking now.
I wish I could drink.
I went years saying, you know, I don't drink, but I'm trying to start, and so now that I've started, I'm glad. So
Yeah.
well, I also think that I've had a lot of female organ problems my whole life. To the
do
point
you attribute that to?
I most definitely do. I
Really?
I don't
Okay.
know why I attributed it to it, other than just like this feeling.
Okay.
I think I may have been a breeder, and that's why they took me so many times, was making sure my DNA's where they want it and stuff like that. And my female issues got so bad that I had to have a hysterectomy at a young age,
wow.
just
Yeah, very
to
much so.
cure those problems. And I think it all kind of ties in together somehow. And I think they're using us as breeders, and I don't know how else to put it. You know.
I think
Well,
one of the points that we both feel that a lot of people don't address about abductees is that even though if it's only one incident that happens in your life, it affects you the rest of your life. Maybe not necessarily in the way you think it would, maybe you don't remember it all, but in different ways, we both believe that it affected us physically and mentally the rest of our lives. And I certainly did not know about hers for a long, long time.
I
And I had never told her about mine either, and until you were in your 30s.
Yeah, and what's weird
Yeah.
is we have very similar stories.
Very similar.
Very similar stories.
Yeah.
and you compared those at a later date,
Yeah.
Yeah.
unbeknownst to either of you.
Correct.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't even admit my abduction till I was in my 30s. And it was, we were, the story goes that we were Christmas shopping, and I went into a bookstore to look for Christmas presents, and the book Communion had just come out, which has a picture of a gray on the front cover. And I saw that picture, and I had my first panic attack that I'd ever had in my life.
Yeah.
I totally,
I
Wow.
remember that.
absolutely
Yeah, she
freaked
did.
out.
She spazzed in the mall.
I completely shut down, and the memories started coming back. And like I was probably 35?
Yeah.
Yeah, 35 when that happened. So, and I was abducted when I was
So
5.
that's just a couple years ago, Anne.
Yeah, yeah, right. Thank you.
That's recent history.
I was.
Wow. Well, tell us your account, Anne.
Yeah.
Okay, so very similar. Bright light. I remember being raised up out of bed, floating outside my window. I remember raising up in the
Anne,
backyard.
how old were you?
I was about 5.
How
I
old
was
were
either
you?
4 or 5. I was very young.
Okay, so both very
Yeah.
young kids.
Yeah, I
Okay.
know. Well, you would think they'd be a little older.
Yeah.
I can remember looking down, that's my foot, looking down from, I was in a greenish sphere, which, just like she had, and I remember looking down into my backyard and seeing my parents. We lived in California, and there was big bay windows. I could remember seeing them sleeping in bed, and I remember the first thing that came back to me, my first memory, was my anger at my parents for allowing this to happen. But remember, you're only 4 or 5 years old. You don't
Yeah,
understand
absolutely.
everything that's going on
Yeah.
or the reality or anything. And I just remember being so disappointed in them and being so angry. And that feeling really scarred me with my relationship with my parents when I was younger, because I always felt like
Well,
they would never have my back, they would never understand, and that they didn't care what happened to me. I mean, it really, and that stayed with me a very long time. I had the
bless
same
your heart. That's
experience
horrible.
of a voice telling me, now I remember a being in the sphere with me. I remember sitting in the sphere. The being looked very similar to what they call a little gray, but he was taller. He was
Okay.
bigger and darker,
Okay.
color skin.
So a tall gray?
A tall
right?
gray, I guess.
Would you
Yeah,
consider it?
I guess
Because
so.
I mean, there are the small grays, there are the tall grays, and the tall grays seem to have a little malevolence to them. Is that your
Yes. Yeah.
take?
And I got now my voice. I couldn't tell you whether it was male or female. It was, but I had the same comment of, "You've had this done many times," and I actually remember 3 times, but I think there were many more times than that.
Okay.
And I remember going up in the sphere. I remember flying over neighbors' backyards. I remember one time them getting somebody else. So there was 2 of us with this person or this thing.
In the same
And
in the same sphere?
In the same sphere. I remember going
Okay.
up. I remember entering a room where there were lots of these beings, and then that's as far as it goes. I don't know what happened from there or anything else, but that's it until, of course, then several years later, like I said, and you were talking about, I had a scar on one of my ankles that felt like it had a little pea in it, and I'm as like a little tiny, like a BB or something in it, for the longest time, and it was about 1.5 inches long scar, and I had it for like 15 years, and then when I was in my 20s, it was just gone.
Wow.
Which was weird, because I mean it was at least 1/4 inch high and about 1.5 inches long, and then it was just gone. If that makes sense.
Now,
I mean, why? I
Mariah
don't know why.
indicated that they had lost interest in her, possibly because of. Do you feel the?
Oh
the
yeah, I
same?
felt the same way. I can remember. That's why I smoked cigarettes. That was my excuse in my little head. Well, they'll stay away from me if I smoke, And I actually, at that time, after the communion thing, I started smoking more. I used to be kind of a light smoker, and not very often. Didn't drink very much, I just worked hard trying to raise my kids, and when the memories started flooding back, it's a very emotional journey you go on, and because it rocks your core. I mean, you question everything. You question your religion, you question your family, you question, does that explain why I did what I did when I was 7, kind of thing. It really rocks you.
Yeah.
But it happened again. I believe it was 1999 here in Lenore City. I remember looking up in the sky, and there was this little cloud in front of a bank of clouds getting ready to roll in. I was a farmer, always stood out, watched the weather every day, and I remember thinking, that's very unusual. It looks like a little baby cloud. Didn't think about it. It was kind of, it was 6-sided, which I thought was unusual, because no, clouds aren't the same shape on one side as they are the other. But I didn't connect with it.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't connect with it at all. And I remember looking up later in the day, and it was still there, where the clouds had moved on, but this one spot had stayed. And it was there for about 3 days, and then it was gone. And I just thought that was weird. Maybe it was something from Oak Ridge, or I didn't put anything together until about 4 or 5 days later. I happened to be taking somebody close to me to a surgery. I believe we were going to UT hospital, and it was like 4:30 in the morning. And I had 2 women in the back seat, and we all 3 witnessed, for lack of a better word, a spaceship up above the sky. I can't tell you how far. I couldn't tell you if it was 100 feet or a mile, up. But it was very large. It was flying in it was swaying back and forth, I don't know if that makes sense at all. And then it would do large, I guess, zigzags, maybe the best way to describe it. Like it was trying to cover a lot of area in one spot.
Yeah.
And it kind of followed us. We were going down 70, then we got on the interstate, and we still watched it. It was in front of us to the right, and then once we got out onto the interstate, it went up much higher where we could barely see it. And then guess what I saw? A green orb. A large green orb, and I could see 2 figures in it as they came down to Earth.
Wow. Okay.
And then it dissipated. Do you know where Avalon is? On Highway 70?
No. Oh, yes, I do.
Okay,
actually.
the back of Avalon, it was the golf course there. We were on 40, and it was right there right before the split, and you could see the orb come straight down, and was and saw it come and landed right in the middle of the golf course. But this was probably 4:30 in the morning. There was nobody there, but you could clearly see the green orb because everything else was blackened out, because it was dark. And then
what did the craft itself look like? What did the craft itself look like?
It was just a sphere, and sometimes it was like it was reflecting white, and then other times it was more of a silver tint. And then sometimes it would have a bluish or a greenish tint to it. But it was very large, and just moved with incredible speed.
Large as in, are we talking football field size? Or are we talking blimp size?
About half the size of a football field.
Okay, so about 50 yards long.
5 or 6 school buses.
Did it make
maybe?
noises?
Yeah. No,
Okay.
no
Did
noise.
it make noises?
Not at all.
Okay.
No noise at all. No. And all 3 of us saw it, and we all 3 talked about it. And the other 2 ladies, one of them won't even talk about it at all, and the other one just because I asked her if she wanted to come on, and she said no. She said she's never seen anything like it, never will again, and that's just the way she felt. So, and she won't even.
What do you think, in your opinion, because you've had up close personal experiences? What is the interest here for them? I mean, we know now that there's very high probability of life beyond this planet. So, and with more and more accounts showing up along these lines, it's pretty evident that we may well be visited by these beings. What do you think their interest is?
Here's a question.
Yeah.
Are they aliens or are they here? I don't think they're necessarily coming from outer space. I think they're here.
Okay.
I think they're here,
think
and
they're
I think
already
they've been here. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think there's more than. Oh, I'm very open-minded about it, but I really feel like there's many species.
Yeah.
And I would not be surprised if they're not among us.
Yeah. I think that it's a pretty good probability that there are more than a few species.
Yeah.
And I am curious as to what each species' interest would be, because you hear a lot of reports around nuclear sites. You hear, along those lines. So it's fascinating to think about, and I'm sure we would be, as a culture, so primitive compared to what.
Oh, I agree. I think that's why we don't hear from them, is because we are so primitive, and that's why they hide. And I'm not, I have no clue what they're doing, and I know there's lots of speculations. I mean, what did they want with a 4-year-old little girl? What could I provide for them? I don't know. I think it's something
that had
genetic.
To be some. Yeah, that has to be some kind of biological interest. I
have nothing else to offer.
Yeah, right.
And
what kid would? So.
And I remember he was so nonchalant about, this is no big deal. We do it all the time. Don't worry about it. Let's just get on with it, get her done.
Yeah.
That was the attitude, and which was somewhat calming, but at the same time it was frustrating.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. I think it's interesting and sad, really, that it impacted you in your thoughts about your parents in that way.
It did very much so.
Because did you attribute those? I mean, as time wore on and you hit your preteens and might have had issues arise with mom and dad, did those thoughts come into play?
Yes and no. The thoughts came into play, but I think as I got older, I completely denied what had happened and just completely suppressed it. But the emotions don't go away, if that makes sense. So when something would happen in the household that would maybe just upset you a little bit, I would just go off the rocket. Because I just took things so much more intensely, I think, because I felt so abandoned. That's what my daughter, she used that word, and I thought, I don't know that I would say that, but maybe that's a good point. Maybe you feel abandoned by your parents because they're not rescuing you, they're...
Yeah, there would have to be a certain vulnerability there that you're experiencing.
Yeah.
Which at that age you're expecting your parents to to be there and protect you from. And so I understand that.
I was so angry for so long about that.
But in what you said really resonates, because you can't, and I haven't had this kind of experience obviously, but you can't have something like this happen to you and have it not shake your worldview completely.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at
there's a lot of us out there too.
Look at the Betty and Barney Hill abduction case, which seems to be very credible, and look how it reshaped their lives. Or Travis Walton and his situation.
Cannot help but commend the first people that came forward. They really were, and I can't imagine the ridicule, especially at the times when they were coming through that. That was in the 50s, when it Betty Hill and the Hills, I think, or 50s, early 60s.
I think 61, September 61 maybe, and Travis was in the 70s, 75.
I remember his case very well.
Do you?
It was because I had not. I still hadn't admitted that what had happened to me at that point when I heard about his case. That was like, oh,
Yeah.
this is some Hollywood movie. Somebody's come up with there's going to be a joke at the end of this story. That's what I kept waiting for, I
Yeah.
remember. But
Yeah.
until I saw a picture of a gray, that's what really triggered it for me. I was in total
Really?
denial.
Yeah.
But I have a tendency
Yeah.
to do that a lot about. I don't want to remember the bad,
Yeah.
and that's just who
Yeah.
I am. And I think people in general don't. When bad things happen to you or bad memories happen, you kind of tuck them away on a bookcase, and
Yeah, the trauma. I mean, whether it's goodness. I mean, I lose my parents at a young age, and I don't like going to funerals. I have an aversion to that whole scene. So I think that kind of element is very true. How you deal with trauma is a very difficult thing, and that would have been an incredibly traumatic event. So,
and when you're 4 or 5, you don't know if that's not normal. That every kid's going through that.
right, absolutely. Yeah,
So.
and that's a very good point. At that age, your worldview is very unshaped at that point. So
Yeah, I think I need therapy, but I don't know anybody that offers alien therapy.
well, I'll ask around on that too if that would be helpful for you. But thanks for sharing.
Sure, not a problem.
It's like you said, it probably happens a lot more than what we're aware of, just because of the stigma attached. And it was worse in the 50s, 60s, and 70s than it is today, because now we're a little more enlightened about what could be out there. So hopefully that has helped maybe cope a little bit for you.
I hope you find what you're looking for.
Yeah,
and I wish you luck. And I know that I have spoken with a few people around here that Oak Ridge seems to be a rather popular draw for extraterrestrials. So I think there's a group around here.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah.
And I've had some friends that have seen things that they can't explain in broad daylight. Like I said, I haven't myself, but I think they're pretty credible accounts. So I greatly appreciate you talking about the story and Mariah sharing her experiences as well. And thanks for coming on.
Sure, anytime, Scott.
All right, and we will be back on It's True, Tales of the Paranormal after this. All right, back on It's True, Tales of the Paranormal, and thanking you for watching, and especially thanking Anne and Mariah for joining us and sharing their experiences. Interesting stuff indeed. So if you've had a run-in with the inexplicable, reach out, email us, let us know what's been going on, and we'll take it from there. Also, if our little community here can help Anne and Mariah, any connections to regressive hypnosis therapists, I think that would be helpful, counselors, etc. You have any of those referrals that you could pass along, please feel free to do so. And again, thanks for watching. It's True, Tales of the Paranormal.
Thank you for listening to It's True, Tales of the Paranormal. Subscribe today to receive updates on new episodes and Tales of the Paranormal.